Om Sairam to our listeners. Welcome to Saturday News number 847. So today we'll be hearing some stories about the early days with Sai Baba. There was a group of young people called themselves as Sai Hippies in the late 1960s and early 1970s. Came to Prasanthi in India to see Sai Baba. They stayed sometimes for months and became known as Sai Hippies. In July of 2019, there was a reunion of these devotees at Feathered Pipe Ranch in Montana, USA. So this was recorded at that union, and they tell their wonderful stories while remembering those times. So this is the final part 2. Before we get into that, let's have a Ganesh Bhajan for you. Oh, by the way, I'd like to thank Jean Messi for allowing this interview to take place.
Gajana My name is Richard Bayer. I live in the Santa Cruz Mountains in Northern California. And my experience of coming to Swami is probably some combination of everything that you've heard, bits and pieces of how things came together and how we heard of Swami and how we wound up there, which I did in 1971. But I'd like to fast forward a little bit to 1974 when I had been living in Prasanthi Nilayam and working in Prasanthi Nilayam for about a year. And there was an experience that pretty much informed the next 45 years of my life. Swami had called a group of us in for an interview, and one of them was a college student. Now, sometimes people don't realize, because of the divinity of Sai Baba and the aspect of what went on around him and the mystery, that being around him could be extremely down to earth. He was often joking, teasing, and wanting to lighten the mood. And he was speaking to this college student and saying, "You're very lucky. The college students come here and you haven't had much experience of life yet. You don't have the responsibility of a wife, of a business, of a family, of other obligations. So you can take this pure teaching and use it to move ahead with your life." And Swami turned to me and said, "You have a question?" I rarely ask questions. And I said, "Well, what would be the right practice for someone who does have a wife and a family and a business and some obligations," which I had at the time. And he laughed, and then he got a very serious look on his face and said, "Adjustment sadhana." And the group of people that was in the interview all looked pretty puzzled. And he said, "Let me tell you a story." And a version of the story was printed in a book by someone who was there, but it didn't have all of it. Swami said, Jesus was walking down a dirt road with his disciples. And just ahead, down the road, there was a dead dog lying there. And it was surrounded by flies, and it was an awful sight. And his devotees were nudging him to go to the other side of the street and walk around this very sad sight. And Jesus pushed them aside and walked up to this dead dog and knelt down and said, "Do you see the beauty in this animal? Look at his teeth. In his life, he had to struggle for food, and he had such wonderful teeth. Even in death, you can see them. And those teeth enabled him to survive. And his coat is falling off, but that coat protected him from the heat. It protected him from the weather. And like this, Jesus pointed out these aspects that were so horrifying to his disciples that they wanted to get away from it as quickly as possible. And Swami said, your sadhana is whatever is in front of you. Whatever you see, whatever comes in front of you, adjust. Do the best you can with it. There's nothing else that you need to know. There's nothing else that you need to do. And that was an example to me of how Swami could pull together all of the elements of the history of humans seeking, looking for mystical answers, mystical solutions to their many lifetime problems, and just in a nutshell, give you a kernel that you could wake up every day and what's in front of me, and I'll do my best with it. And sometimes I'll succeed and sometimes I'll fail, but it doesn't matter. And that was the moment that's informed the last 45 years of my life, and I'm happy to share it.
It was in 1970, and I had spent some time in therapy, and I was at a point where I was just kind of bouncing around, kind of looking for something. I didn't know what really. And I saw a poster advertising. Dick Bach was showing a film of Baba, and it was in a small bookstore. I think it was called the Bodhi Tree Bookstore. It was in Hollywood somewhere on Melrose, I think. So I decided to go. I went down there, I saw the film, and at one point during the film, there was a close-up of Baba. I think he was standing on a veranda. I don't even remember where it was taken, whether it was in Puttaparthi or Whitefield. And he took a close-up of him, and it was just his head, and he had a very strong stare, I guess, or gaze. And it caught me. And for a moment, I wasn't looking into his eyes. I felt like I was just looking into the universe. I could see all the stars. And it pretty well blew me away. After the film, Richard Bach said there was a chartered flight being put together up in San Francisco, and anybody wanted to go could sign up with him after. And at that point, I decided that's it. I'm going to be on that plane. And I signed up for it and paid for it. It took a while for it to get together. Went up to San Francisco and hung around for a week, waiting for the flight to get together. Found out it had been canceled and there were no refunds. So I went back home and got a commercial flight, went to India, and that was it. So I spent a year there, and one of the best years of my life.
Yes, my name is Benno Wesner. I come from Germany, from Nuremberg. And how I came to Sai Baba was, I was the second time in India. I came overland, and the second time I was in North India, then I went to Goa. And I was already a year in India when I was in Bangalore, very tired, mentally tired and very confused. And then I thought maybe I go to Puri. And then I changed my mind and tried to hitchhike to Hyderabad. And yeah, before when I was in a bazaar, I was staying in a Sikh temple for 3 days, and you got food and you could stay there. I didn't have any money at that time. And then I tried to hitchhike to Hyderabad, and I got stuck near Mudanahali on Nandi Hill. And then I thought, why do I not come forward? I came from Bombay to Bangalore in one night. And so all of a sudden, an American couple stopped with their VW bus. And they were saying, yeah, we're going to Puttaparthi, there is a Shivaratri festival. And I thought, okay, I will go to the Shivaratri festival and see what's happening there. I had been before, in this year in India, I had seen different gurus, and I was a bit tired going to ashrams. And so I thought maybe it's a festival and go there. I didn't know about Sai Baba before, and I saw they opened the door of the VW bus, and there was this huge picture of Swami. And I thought, strange, he looks like Jimi Hendrix. And it was, I didn't got attached to this outer form. So I thought, let's go to Puttaparthi. And then it was a week before Shivaratri, and there was no buildings you could stay. So I was used to, took my straw mat, went to the Chitravati River, stayed there the night, and came in daytime. I came for darshan. And that time I came for darshan, I looked very wild. I had a dhoti, just a sadhu bag on my side, and no shirt. And I was sitting in darshan line, I didn't know really what was going on. Went back to the Chitravati at night, and my mind was going, rotating. It was, I was on the edge of, getting crazy. And then Shivaratri came, and then all of a sudden I met some friends who came from Goa, like India and some other people, and we got this interview. And when in that interview, my mind was still in turmoil, and all of a sudden it became very, very smooth. It was like the sea was very quiet. And Swami took me behind the curtain for 2 minutes and he told me, "You're always thinking good, bad, good, bad, good, bad." And then and also he told me about the stomach, I should eat better. And then I thought, after the interview, I thought there's no traveling anymore, no outside traveling, I'm home. But I still could not get to Swami's outer form. That still took me some months to, I was very much into Ramakrishna and Vivekananda. And then after Shivaratri, I thought, what should I do now? And India and some of the other people said, we're going to go to Whitefield, get some private interview. So we went to Whitefield and there was, of course, no accommodation. We were living under a tree, just opposite the ashram. There were about 7 people of us and some are here in the room. And and then we went every day to the darshan line, and it was difficult food situation. So there was a little restaurant we could only eat, and we called it Horo Bhavan, which means like the house of horror, And so, and then after these 2 months, all of a sudden Swami called us in. I was writing a letter. Swami, there is a pump house. I want to stay there during the rainy season. And then I just had this letter, went to Darshan, and all of a sudden some of Swami's responsible person there, they came and said, all the Westerners have to move in. And so the thing started. Like our group of young Westerners, we were like the kindergarten. We were the first class, and slowly we got more and more teach through Swami, and and Swami became my life. And after 4 months, I was ready to accept Swami's outer form. I had a dream, Ramakrishna and Swami just melted. And then Swami came out for darshan, and I had a feeling, now I'm ready. And he came, was standing before me, and then I touched his feet, and that was the beginning of 2 years being with him, and of course being with him then 49 years now. Sai-ram.
My name is Brian Steele, and unlike a lot of the stories I'm hearing here initially in my very early 20s and the very early 1970s, I was not a spiritual seeker. And I was actually a recovering Catholic. And then what happened was my brother gave me a book by Arnold Schulman about Sai Baba, and this was 1971 or 2. And I read it and went, well, that's intriguing, but I've always been a skeptic in my life. And then in 1974, my brother said Michael said he was going to Puda party. Did I want to come? And I didn't have anything going on at the time, and I thought, well, okay, what I'll do is I'll go ahead to Puda party, and then I'm going to I'll spend 2 weeks there, and then I'll head on north to Kashmir, rent a houseboat, and do the hippie thing. So we end up going to Puda party, and at Prashanti Nilayam, and my very first day there, during darshan, I was on front row, and I'm watching Sai Baba walk, doing his darshan, and he stops down the line, and he makes vibhuti for somebody. And being a skeptic, I was wondering, I wonder if he has a tube up his arm or something. And he kept walking down the line, and he got to the guy right next to me and told the guy next to me to put his hands together, which the gentleman did. And then instead of looking at the man while he's creating vibhuti, he was looking at me and he rolled up his sleeve. And I'm looking there, and he's looking at me, and then when he's done, he kind of dusted me off with the vibhuti a little bit. And I went, okay, end of that theory. And then I never made it north. I ended up spending 4 months with my brother there. And it was phenomenal, just interviews, festivals, watching his miracles, everything. Yeah, I got blown away. So then 2 years later, we went back for another 4 months. And I've been back since, and he has let me know that he's with me all the time. And he said that even in an interview, "Don't worry, I'm always with you. I know what's going on." And in the 1990s, there was this problem at work to show how it just keeps carrying over. Anyway, there were situations happening at work, and I said, I could really use your help on this. I said that during the interview, and he said, "I've got it under control. You know, it's going to be okay." And it was. And I have to say that throughout my life, I've been blessed beyond measure.
Ram, I'm Mike Steele, and I went and visited a friend in the foothills of the Sierras. Kriyananda, who was a follower of Yogananda, had a cooperative community up there. And I was visiting a friend, and she worked in the print shop, and up on the print shop there was this picture of some guy with a big afro. It was just a bust, you know, it didn't show that he was wearing a robe, but he had an orange shirt on with no collar, and, you know, so I said, "Who's that?" You know, and I thought it looked like Jimi Hendrix too, or Buddy Miles. And I really liked them, you know, and so I'm still a big Jimi Hendrix fan. Anyway, she said, "Well, that's Sai Baba," and I was so caught by his image. I mean, there was something about his looks that just captured me, and I said, "Well, what is he? What's he do? Why has he got a picture up there?" And she just happened to have the record by Richard Bach. And so she gave it to me. It was an LP, you know, and I played it. And I had read the Bhagavad Gita. And on that record, not only, well, I was raised Catholic, like my brother. And so I was used to people singing in a foreign language. And I wasn't put off by the bhajans. I thought his voice was beautiful. And the spirit of the people that were responding, it just overwhelmed me. And then on the flip side was the discourse in which he announces who he is, and he mentions, "I incarnate from age to age." And I realized, oh my God, you know, this guy's claiming to be Krishna. I mean, that's the same thing Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita. And then I said, "Do you have anything else?" And she happened to have the book of Kasturi's, you know, the first in his biography. So I read that, and it just had me in tears. I just decided, you know, well, I thought there's no way that if this guy was bogus, that he could fool so many people for so long, you know. On the other hand, if there's anything to it, it would make a big difference in my life. I mean, it would change my whole worldview, you know. And so I decided I really wanted to go see for myself. And that was in '70. And it took 4 years before I was able to go. And in the meantime, I had moved up to Alaska, so I, you know, didn't know anybody who had ever had any contact with him, and didn't even know anybody in America had, except that the book, I did have Charles and Faith Penn's address because it was in the book. So I did actually write to Charles, and he wrote back. He was very nice. But I had no idea how to get there or anything like that, or what we were getting into. So we got these excursion fare tickets for 4 months, and they were the cheapest ones available then. So we flew to Delhi, and then we took Air India to Hyderabad. And then we took the bus from Hyderabad. And we were told, "Oh, yes, you'll get there today," you know. And in fact, we wound up spending the night in Anantapur. And then we finally got to Puttaparthi. It was a miracle that we got there because, you know, they don't have English on the bus. And nobody knew could even understand our pronunciation of Puda Party. So we finally got there, and it was like the beginning. I mean, Dasara was just starting. And I mean, thousands of people in this place. And at the time, there was East Prashanti and there was a shed. And so we found a place to unroll our bags. But before we did that, I found out when the bus was leaving, because I thought, oh my God, Swami's not even going to know that we're here. This is not at all what I had in mind. I'm not sure I want to even stay, I'll go up to Kashmir with my brother. And so we get from the guy, there was a Sevadal in the shed who said, okay, leave your stuff here, but there's somebody going to the cafeteria. It was lunchtime, and he said he'll show you where the cafeteria is. So the guy who was going there took us to the cafeteria, and in the course of it, you walk in front of the mandir, and while we were walking in front of the mandir, the guy says, well, this is the mandir, Swami has a room up here on the right side, and there's the balcony, and then he sometimes comes out of the room and eats over in the room on the left of the balcony. And just as he was saying that, I mean, we were standing like from here to that poor elk head there. And Swami comes out on the balcony, and just, I had been thinking, like I said, he won't even know we're here. Well, there he was standing there, and we were the only people around. It was like lunchtime, and people were sacked out under any tree they could find. It was really hot. And Swami just stood there and looked at us like, it seemed like forever, but it was probably about 10 seconds. And you described the gaze somebody was talking about, and I'm sure you've all experienced that piercing gaze. And I was just looking up at him, and I can't describe the feeling, but then he just raised his hand like that and goes like that, and then he walked on. And I've been with him ever since. Sai Ram.